What is up, everyone? JD here. I hope you're doing well today. I'm excited to bring you my full review of the Null Knives Voodoo. Let's get into it. Alright guys, so what we're going to be doing today with the Voodoo is we're going to do some size comparisons to give you a point of reference. We're going to do a weight to check what the knife weighs in hand, in pocket, how it's all going to feel. We're going to jump into my thoughts and impressions, and if I have any, we'll do some alternative recommendations. Let's go ahead and jump into the size comparisons first. We're going to bring out the Cut Serene. Right now, this is my favorite budget button lock out there for under 50 bucks. D2 steel, aluminum, and a fantastically tuned button lock. And we're going to bring out the CJRB Echo, $50. Man, this Laconico is offered in a liner lock and a button lock. Fantastic. But as you can see, this is a full-size knife, as in it is bigger than the largest knife that I'm bringing in for comparison. So let's go ahead and get the Echo out of the way. Gosh, that thing is buttery smooth. And we'll move the Cut out of the way. We're going to bring out a couple more. Let's bring out that Demco AD 20.5, nice medium-sized EDC on my channel. And then we're going to bring out the Spyderco Shaman as I kick these knives around. And as you can see, the Voodoo and the Shaman are the same size. I would even say the Voodoo might have just a skosh more length overall on it. The blade's about the same, but you got just a hint more handle length than you do on that Shaman. Let me go ahead and move the Demco AD 20.5 out of the way. We're going to bring the bug out back out here. Well, we're going to bring it out here. It hasn't been out yet to be back. And we'll go ahead and move the Shaman out of the way and bring out the Mordax, and the Voodoo is definitely going to be larger than both of these knives. Sorry, the curvature, I didn't realize I was laying it at an angle. Let me go ahead, move the bug out of the way. We're going to take the Mordax and we're going to do some thickness profile comparison against the Voodoo. The Voodoo has some contoured scales, so it is probably going to look like it's just a little bit thicker than some of these knives, and that actually might be the same thickness as the Shaman. Let me see. No, just a little bit thicker, but again, you have some step up and you have some contouring going on there, whereas the Shaman is more of a flat scale. So the Voodoo is just a little bit thicker at the most contoured point, and we'll go ahead and bring the Serene back out here. Yeah, so just a little bit thicker than both. What are my thoughts about this knife? Let's go ahead and jump into that. Apologies, wife came out to ask me a question. So as I was saying, I do want to jump into my thoughts on this particular knife. So let's talk about ergos. This has a very interesting looking handle shape, and I'm not sure if to you it may look comfortable or not. So sound off in the comments what you think about the knife. I do love hearing that, what your thoughts are and everything. As far as the ergos, it's actually very comfortable because of the thickness and how they have this part here skinny. The first four fingers land on it very comfortably, and the chunky part, my pinky, for me, lands on it very nicely, very comfortable. I like this a lot. Pocket clip goes in and out of the pocket nicely, lays flat. I do feel the tip a hint, but it isn't pokey. It doesn't bother me. It works just fine. I think they did a great job with that pocket clip. The transitions here, if this is best tech as I suspect it is, I think it is. I need to really reach out and confirm that. The transitions are really, really good. Now, this started life out with the black micarta scales, and then these fat carbon Mars Valley scales were made after to be put on. Now, I did notice after having it for a few days, it originally had just a little bit of like looseness or adjustment here, but as it was on the knife, it went away. So what I'm thinking is they probably didn't have this fitted right. It was probably oversized a little bit. And what's happened with me using it, carrying it, and all of that, it's kind of worn itself in, and now it's laying completely flat. I do not feel any transition. So these aftermarket, well, they're not aftermarket, but they're optional scales that were picked up later that were put on the knife. Those transitioned really, really well. I love how they look against the black with the black hardware. I think this was a great choice. Sat2 Dave picked these up for me for this knife. He thought they would look good on there. and I think he absolutely nailed it. I think they look phenomenal, very exciting, great pop of color. And I know that Satu doesn't like color on his stuff. He's, you know, pretty much liking everything to be solid, maybe monotone colors on some knives, but this is not really his style. From what I know about him, I could be wrong. He might like this a lot because it is different enough from what you see on the normal run-of-the-mill pocket knives, which is what I was drawn to about the Voodoo. Now, let's get back to the knife. Access to the lock bar is nice. I know it's a little hard to tell here, but there is a little bit of pattern on the inside of this lock bar, which makes it nice to get to, and it's chamfered, so you actually have room to get in there with the thumb to be able to disengage the lock. Now, this has smoothness like most Bestecs that I'm familiar with. It is not a fall shut knife, but it is really smooth on the close, and I like that a lot. Have not had that pivot back out in the days that I've carried it and the amount of time that I've used it. So I really like that lock bar. It works great, as you can see, for the way that I disengage it. If you lift up on the finger, really good for that as well. And if you like to close and start to close, or disengage, sorry, and start to close, it works fine for that as well. Now, access to the thumb studs are really good. They're way out here. You have a little bit of like knockdown going on here with the design of the knife, and you're able to get to it really well. I love these like triangle step up pattern type of thumb studs. They work really, really good, and the thumb lands on them perfectly. Very snappy detent on the deployment, and then it has a fuller here that I like to go down into the corner of and kind of flick it out that way on both sides. Works really well because it is bolstered. I land naturally right on top of the bolster for that reverse flick, so I do not have any issues whatsoever using it lefty. But of course, the pocket clip, to my knowledge, is not reversible at all. So the dang, I might need the flashlight to show you all that screw. It's a little dark in there with all the black. Let's do this, and see it right there with my fingers in the way. I'm hoping that you're able to catch that a little bit to see where that screw is. So I'm holding it still for myself. Oh, by the way, you have the Voodoo, since we're talking about that, Voodoo number 85, I think it is. A little hard to see through the camera lens. It is smaller, so I'm not seeing it like you do. Yeah, I think that's 85, so I took it off just to confirm. I like the design on the back spacer. You got about a halfway mark on the back spacer with some jimping on there, or milled out pattern on there. Think they're supposed to be V's? Let me know in the comment. It looks like some V's that turn into two hearts. Let me know what you think, if that's right or not. I think it is. So that covers deployment, lockup. I showed you access, but I didn't talk about lockup. Lockup sitting at about 25%. Really nice, solid lockup. You have a mirror finish stone wash on here. Or I wouldn't say mirror, I would say polished. This is not mirror. I retract that, whatever you want to call it. It is a mirror finish. You have jimping here. You have a little poon on the top. And I would call this... Is it flat? Not my finger's not flat. What am I doing? Is it flat? Let me grab my toolbox here. So I'm going to call that a sheep's foot pattern. Nice tip out here. It has punctured into a couple of packages very nicely. And with the pinch grip, I've been able to open things cautiously, carefully, and with great detail to make sure that I'm not cutting into what's inside the package to get into it. So the utility shape on this is phenomenal. This is a really impressive knife. You have great details on here, as I mentioned. Oh yeah, the thumb studs are removable, if you were wondering. You got nice jimping on here that allows you to step up. My camera's struggling a little bit with the dark color, but you have, again, the step up here, jimping for the finger to catch on. You got jimping here on both sides of the pivot. Really nice stone washed finish on the black, so it doesn't just look like it's painted. And even the micarta, even though we're looking at the fat carbon scales, the micarta scales looked really good, and they had like some patina coming to them or on them from I guess being handled, I don't know, or maybe from the factory. So you had like these little spots of black on them, and it looked really, really good. I think that's everything. Let's talk about alternative recommendations, because this too is on the higher side of what the Chinese knives are coming in at. So coming in at around $375 before taxes. Here are some of the competitors. You have the EMP EDC Relative coming in at $375. And this could be a little bit more. I will throw it up on the screen right now to make sure. So future me, please throw that up on the screen to make sure that I'm telling accurate information. And then you have an array of Vera Engineering knives. This one here coming in at $395. So the Synapse XL, very similarly built. You have the bolsters, and you have a variety of scale materials for the rest of the knife. So, and it is bolstered very similarly to the Voodoo. You see both are very bolstered, which is a great design. I like that a lot. This is a Best Tech knife, and as you can see, just making sure, the action is very similar. And actually, I feel like, I know I've had this Synapse longer, but I know the blade's probably heavier, but I feel like there might be some room here. So while we're doing alternative recommendations, if you all do not mind, you're at my mercy. Even if you do, let me grab the T8 and let me just check the pivot here real quick. I may have, when I installed the skiffs, crank down a little too much, because I tend to do that if I feel like there's any play. So T8 for the camera. Let's just, all right, that's a hint. That was a hint of backing off. I felt it move. No play. Okay, so yeah, it was just a little too tight. You see, yeah, this feels like a Best Tech knife as far as the action's concerned. And it's funny that I mentioned that, because we have other Best Techs out here. And am I missing? Am I missing? Huh. I feel like I'm missing one of my, I'm not sure what I did with it though. One of my hex bits. But as I was saying, you're getting this one from EMP EDC for a little less money, and you do have multiple means of deployment as you did on that Vero. And I'm carrying this today, so I'm going to stick it back in my pocket. Alternatively, if you do not want a Chinese made knife, for around $300, you can get the Quiet Carry Drift LC, or you can get the Quiet Carry 9 for $330, all titanium with an inlay. So there is some competition out there for this knife. Now it is an M390 versus the LC200N that you saw there, and the 20 CV that you saw on the 9. And then for a USA alternative for around that same price point, you can land a Shaman and deck it out for around the same money, for under $400. Depending on the type of steel that you want. This one is my M4 variant with my applied, I'm sorry, RGT, always do that. RGT scales that are on here with my MXG clip, and OCD for EDC CME, which is compression made easy. Check out OCD for EDC's website. He has a ton of options for those, and they're really very easy to install. And then another alternative recommendation for $300, USA made, magnet cut steel at 63 to 64 HRC titanium with an axis lock, if you don't mind axis locks. Now I throw that caveat in there. I'm still breaking this one in. They ended up having to replace mine. My first one came with some belt marks on the tip, and for whatever reason, no matter how hard I tried, I could not get it centered. This one's perfectly centered, no issues. It had a little play in the pivot, so I'm trying to find that sweet spot to where I can open and close it. And you know, if you give it some force, because it's a light blade, you can close it. But this feels like a Hogue detent as far as how the axis lock goes. So if you're familiar with Hogue, Hogues feel a little bit more stronger than what you would see from Benchmade. So alternative recommendation for USA made. I really like that one a lot. But for me, I love this knife. I don't care that it was closer to that $400 price point. It tickles my fancy. It hits all the key marks for me: ergos, action, style of blade, performance. Finishes on here from Best Tech are phenomenal. Oh my gosh, that little adjustment. Woo! Oh, it's on the ramp. I guess that would be a nitpick there, is the ramp. But action on here is great. Maybe just a little bit more sharpness on the fuller to catch it. It does feel like I want to slip out of there a little bit with the larger fingers, but really nice. I think it's very wise of them to offer our aftermarket options. I would even like to see my boy Joseph over there at Vera Engineering start to do that. More variety and options for the scale materials for like the Synapse and the Synapse XL. Don't know why I'm taking it off camera, I apologize. But let me know in the comments below, what are your thoughts on the Voodoo? I had the Raiden. I liked the knife, it was a little too small. The Voodoo is the perfect size for me. I really like the looks. I like the attitude of the knife. I love the option to personalize it a little bit. And I like the way that it performs. Shout out to everyone out there that leaves the likes, comments, and is subscribed. I appreciate all the support. I love you guys, and I hope you have a fantastic week. Until next time, peace.